Welcome to the ReUp Men's Podcast with Tim Brown. I'm Brandon Porter. ReUp is here to help you be the man God desires you to be. You can learn more about ReUp at our website, reupmen.com. Well, Tim, when we were kids, we heard about peer pressure, probably from upper elementary school, certainly in middle school, high school. And it's something that we talk about even with our kids, with our grandkids today. Peer pressure is around, and we want to talk about that today, but maybe in a different way than folks would be expecting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As you said, that when we were kids, that was, you always were told not to give in to peer pressure and, and always make good decisions, not based on, the emotions you were feeling from maybe other friends or
Hmm.
whatever. I mean, I think about as a kid, some of the things I did that only reason I did them was because I felt like if I didn't, I wouldn't be included, or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
And so, well, what's interesting is I've even kind of seen that as we become men. I mean, it's amazing how just that, again, it's peer pressure, no other way to say it, can it still even influence us in some of the decisions we make as men, but it can be good at times as well. I mean, if it's coming from the right perspective and the right wisdom and the right person and all that. But, and then I think another thing that we have to kind of think about with peer pressure today as it relates to the church and so forth. We've kind of put people together in groups, kind of peer groups. I mean, church kind of shifted to that model years ago where we thought, we put all the kids over here in this corner and the babies in the foyer and the teenagers over there, and we'd put all, the older people, and so, but actually that kind of peer pressure, doing it that way has not been good when it comes to passing on intergenerational wisdom and so forth. So I think, I, this is so crazy. I met with a guy recently and he said, when I'm with guys my age, most of the time I feel a lot more pressure, peer pressure, because I feel like I've got to present a certain image. He said, but when I'm with older guys, I just feel much more relaxed. I don't feel that pressure. I can, cause I don't, they don't necessarily have an expectation of me and
Hmm.
like my peers do when I'm, with guys my age. So yeah, so that term peer pressure, I think it can be a big umbrella here as we kind of unpack it
Yeah, let's
in this
let's think
episode.
about that a little bit. That's really interesting to think about peers. We do tend to just think about people who are our age, the stage of life we're in at that moment. But we could think about, just as you're talking, I'm thinking about spiritual maturity. That there could be someone who is older in age, who has not been a Christian quite as long, and someone younger who has just come to faith. That they could be in the same category when it comes relationally. And then there are just things, I mean, people change career paths, that they go into a new industry. And so you may be in your mid 40s and you have the same experience that the 25-year-old has.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really interesting to start thinking about that, because we have created that label of people in their 20s are together, people in their, 30 to 45, 45 to 60, that sort of thing. Talk a bit about that, because that's one of the things that ReUp really cares about, is trying to not only get men together beyond just their age, but then also trying to flip that around a little bit as well and get people who are not necessarily, who would not be put together in that affinity group, if
Yeah.
if you would, that you were just mentioning a minute ago.
Yeah. As I sit and think about that and from Reup's perspective, one of the things we've continued to try to um, focus on, and then but now we don't really even have to kind of force the issue anymore because the younger generations, everything, all the data is showing that they're certain things in their life they're okay hanging out with other guys their age, their peers. But for the most part, when it comes to really the things that matter and that are important, I mean, the data shows they want to sit at the table with some older guys. I mean, let's think through this a minute. I mean, if you're freshly married or you hadn't been married very long and you're going through some problems, do you want to sit at a table with somebody that's been married almost the exact amount of time you have, or do you want to sit at the table with somebody that's had a 30-year marriage? I don't think there's any question. We know what that is. you were talking about career path a while ago. Recently had a young man that's in the discipleship group I'm doing right now. The young man, he's a financial guy, and he's considering changing, making a move in his career. Well, is he better off going and seeking advice with another guy that's at the same point in his career, or is he better off with a guy that I recommended to him that he ought to talk to, a friend of mine who's been in the business for 20 something years and been very successful and has made some of those same kind of moves. He's moved to different companies and all that. So I mean, that was a no brainer. He wanted me to hook him up with that guy instead of going and having lunch with a buddy of his who, same stage of his career. So again, when we talk about peer pressure, I think the word pressure, I guess, is the only word we use there because we've used it as a childhood term, but it really analyzing the different parts of your life, I think, is important, and looking at, okay, your spiritual life, your career, your marriage, whatever it may be. If you look at those parts of your life, okay, who are you spending time with that can help you have the best in your spiritual life and in your marriage and in your career and all that? And those are the people you want to hang out with. And if
Mhm.
you don't have, if you look at it and you scan it in there and they seem to be all peers, they seem to be all the same age or at the same stage or whatever, you need to be willing to be uh, proactive and an initiator and find some folks that you can sit with that are a little further down the road. The Bible tells us that wisdom and experience, I think it's over in Deuteronomy, maybe Deuteronomy 6 or whatever. It kind of uses it as like a picture of a river flowing down river. I mean, all that flows down, and it's biblical for us to have those kind of relationships. So that peer pressure, I think, is something you need to constantly look at in your life. And okay, are you being pressured by just people your age, or are you being pressured by older folks? And I think that it's smart to self evaluate
Mhm.
the areas in your life as much as possible and make sure you've got that.
And that's really the hook of this podcast. And so we started out talking about peer pressure as we have known it. The whole your mom said to you, well, if your buddies jumped off a cliff, would you do that as well? And
Right.
so maybe you were assuming that that's what we were going to talk about was resisting the pressure to compare yourselves to do exactly what your buddies are doing. Actually, we wanted to start there and we wanted to bring it to this next point to resist that peer pressure that you only surround yourself with people who are in the same life stage, same life experience, same age that you're in, and to push and to try to encourage for your good to go and connect with some people who are farther down the road. And I would say also, so let's talk about that first a little bit more. But then also, Tim, the other side of that is to speak to some of the older guys who are listening to ask them if they're connecting with guys who are
No doubt.
not
No
so
doubt.
far down the road.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, I'm gonna take a topic right now that is just, it's the elephant in the room, and we've got to bring it into the light. It's nothing but pure evil, darkness. It's got to be brought into the light because it's destroying men, it's destroying marriages, so on and so forth. Is the pornography issue? That uh, the number of young guys, or well, I'm just going to say young guys, but it seems to be more of them than the older guys that come to me that are struggling with that issue. And, it's crazy. They think going and talking to another peer, somebody the same age or whatever, is going to help them most of the time. But what they discover is that guy's struggling with the same thing.
Hmm.
So again, I'm not saying the older guy isn't struggling with it, but in that issue, in that instance, if you had the two choices, let's just go with the percentages. Which one of those guys is probably going to be able to help you more?
Yeah.
Well, I know one of the issues is that's the thing that Satan's done with that addiction and that issue is there's so much shame and guilt involved in it. And I know a young man or any man just feels such shame and guilt to talk about that. But again, an older guy, guys like you and I mean, we used to have to go find that. We had to go seek it out, that temptation of pornography. Now it chases these guys 24/7.
Mhm.
So again, if I was a guy struggling with, if you're listening right now, that I know you're feeling that peer pressure not to say anything or just talk to a buddy your age because he's probably going through the same thing. So that makes you feel comfortable. No, you need to be uncomfortable. And you need to you need to just go find somebody that's older and just roll the dice and play the percentages that they've probably not struggled with it, or if they have in the past, they've they've worked through it a little bit, maybe from
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they might not still be struggling with it, but at least they've got some experience a little more
Yeah.
with it. So
Yeah.
again, peer pressure can look so many different ways. And so I even think with pornography, the peer pressure of I can only talk to somebody my age about this because only people my age go through this. It's kind of that's a peer pressure thought. When you think that, that's a peer pressure thought that the enemy's putting in your head.
Mhm.
No, there's older guys out there that struggled with it too, and you might be surprised who it is and how they could help you if you're willing to move past that peer pressure.
Yeah, when my boys were in high school, one of the schools where they played basketball, the logo was a warrior and it was a knight and it looked like the knight was on a horse. And I can remember one version of that logo. I love that logo. It was fantastic. And one of the versions said battle ready under that logo. And that was very motivating to the boys, to the basketball team as they practiced, as they prepared to get ready for the next game that was in front of them. And that came to mind as you were talking right there, that it is fantastic to be battle ready. We want to be battle ready. We need to be battle ready. But we also need to have people in our lives who are battle tested. They have been through the battle. It's not just that it's just theoretical. I've read some books, I've talked to some guys, and this is our plan for resisting when the battle comes, when the enemy comes to me. But here are some guys who have been out on the battlefield and they can tell me, here are the ways that I won, here are the ways that I lost, here are things I would do over again. Here's what you need to be thinking as you prepare for that battle when it comes to your life. Battle tested. We need men who are battle tested in our lives.
Yeah. So let's use battle ready, battle tested, whatever. I mean, even if you're a guy not struggling with pornography, we're using that topic
Mhm.
right now
That
as an
issue. Yeah.
illustration. Yeah.
Yeah.
What what's wrong with going ahead and seeking out an older guy, start hanging out with him, and talk to him about it? What are things you've done to make sure you have been able to resist it and stay away from it? And well, that allows you to be battle ready. you
Mhm.
know, because you've sat with somebody that's been battle tested. And so yeah, that's a great point. So don't just, even if you're not dealing with something yet, you still need that battle tested person in your life. And
Mhm.
most of the time it's not a peer. It's typically somebody that's a little further down the road. I did a sermon a couple weeks ago at the church I go to. I was filling in for the pastor, and it's called "The Greatest Generation" is what I called the sermon. Um, one of the things I tried to do was really challenge and call back some of the older men in that congregation, and is that a buddy of mine, Chuck Stecker, who who's been a guest
Mhm.
on our podcast, has
Mhm.
he says in his recent book that the problem with the church today when it comes to discipleship is the older generation, and the solution to discipleship in the church today is the older generation. So it's calling them back into the game, giving them a purpose. Don't put them with their peers. Allow them to be in an intergenerational setting, and they'll some of them it revives them. It gets them back into the game, and because they've been battle tested, now they've got whatever was in their bucket. They can now pour that into somebody else's bucket, and which is discipleship. And um, it's just such a needed deal in our society today. And I know the older folks, I hear it all the time. Well, I don't know how to connect with them. I don't think they're interested. It's there. They're just different. It's different. Well, when you were younger, they said that about you.
Mhm.
That never changes. We've
Mhm.
said that for generations to generations, and just step back in the game and see what happens. I think you'll be amazed. And
So how do you do that? How does an older person engage a younger person and just say, "Hey, would you like to get together and" I mean, because I think there's also some humility there. I mean, there
yeah,
is a fear
certainly,
of disconnect, but there's also humility. You don't wanna just walk up to this young guy and say, "Hey, I've got all these years of wisdom. I'd love to
yeah,
pass them on to somebody,"
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um,
Well, two things. I want to say one thing before I address that is back to peer pressure.
mhm,
Us older generations have allowed peer pressure of all of us that are same age, but we've allowed that to keep us from stepping back into the game too. It's this thought process. Oh man, you've done your deal. You raised your kids. You know,
mhm,
you, you worked your career, man. You need to enjoy yourself. You need to play. Well, that's peer pressure. I mean, and that's actually just a bunch of malarkey is what that is, and that's the enemy at work is what that is. He wants you to think that. Oh yeah, man, yeah, I raised my kids, man. I worked for 50 years, and I just want to play golf now. Okay, well, now let's segue into your question there. All
mhm,
right, so go play some golf, but take two or three young guys with you. Just say, do you like to play golf? Yeah. Okay. I'm always looking for some guys to make a foursome. Would you be willing to, if it's somebody you know from church and you've seen them a few times, they've seen you. I mean, don't walk up to a complete stranger. That might be a little weird. But if it's somebody you've seen at church or at your workplace or whatever, and y'all kind of know who each other are, there's nothing I think weird about that. Just walking up saying, "Hey man, I love to play golf. I don't know if you like to play golf. I always like to play golf with a couple of young guys to so I'll feel younger. You can kind of laugh it off or whatever, and you'll be amazed how many will go, yeah, let's do that. Or if you like to hunt, you'll hear that from guys. Oh man, I've retired. I never got to hunt much, and I love to hunt now. Well, great. Take a couple guys with you.
mhm,
And then I know Chuck, his deal is he's all about having a cup of coffee. He'll just
mhm,
we kind of got a guy in there talking, and he said, "Hey, how about I buy you a cup of coffee?"
mhm,
Uh, just there's no magic to it.
yeah,
And again, I think it'll blow your mind if you're an older guy how many yeses you'll get. I mean, my
mhm,
mentoring group I do that I call an investment group. Whenever I start a new one, I always send out 10 or 12 invites, a text message, and I say the first 6 that respond are in. And I mean, some of these guys I don't even know.
mm,
I've just gotten their name from one of the other, somebody I've mentored before, and I'll just mention that guy's name in the invitation and text it to them. Well, I'll get within 30 minutes, I'll have all 6 guys. I mean,
mm,
they jump all over it.
yeah,
So I think we've got to get away from that peer pressure as older people thinking, well, I've done my duty. And then that peer pressure also of, well, they won't react to you. They won't they
mhm,
won't connect to you. So you need to
mm,
stay away from them. That's peer
m'kay.
pressure too. And we got to quit giving into that peer pressure.
Yeah, that's helpful. All right, let's kind of wrap it up. Turning it the other direction for the young guy, how does he open his eyes and see the opportunities that God's placed around him to lock into this kind of relationship?
Well, with young guys, one of the things I try to do when I, kind of first meet them or whatever is kind of address this. It's kind of a silly thing. I'd say, I don't know about you, but I've never met a guy who his goal every day to get up was to be a failure and to be a knucklehead, you know, and they'll laugh or whatever. So I'm throwing that out there now for you to listen
Mhm,
to. Hey,
mhm,
you're a young guy. You just need to, in your mind, realize that God wants more for you. He didn't create you to be a knucklehead. And so there's always going to be some area in your life, if you'll slow down enough to look kind of self-evaluate your life, there's always going to be some area in your life that could be better. And there's always somebody out there that could help you with that. So so I'll just challenge you, if you're listening, if you really want to be the man God made you to be, then Don't think it's going to fall out of the sky. Be proactive and go, hey, you know what? Gosh, I saw that couple, that guy at work. I heard him say the other day he's been married 47 years. I've been married 2. Man, I wonder if he I wonder if I ask him if he might go to lunch with me. Yeah, or, um, I heard a guy say the other day at church that he had at his job or whatever reached a certain level in his job, but man, he seems like a great guy too, and apparently a good dad and all that. I wonder how he did that. I'm gonna ask him if he might go to lunch with me, So I think you just gotta constantly be thinking, God made me for more. If you young guys are out there, just always be thinking that way. God made me for more. So what does that look like? Well, I want more in my marriage. We'll go hang out with a guy who's been married for a while and so forth. So I think that's it. Just realize you're God's man. He made you for more and it's out there. If you kind of goes back to the scripture, if you ask, you'll receive. It's kind of the same thought process. If you'll ask somebody to hang out with you, most of the time it'll happen.
Well, we can't take the initiative for you, but we can provide platform opportunity resources for you if you will take the initiative. And that's what ReUp has been doing now for 15 years. And we want to keep doing that. And we want to help you. And so we invite you to go to our website, reuppodcast.com. You can find some assessment tools for your local church. You can find resources if you're interested in trying to get a group of guys we call a fire team together to start walking together, studying, being accountable, pushing each other, encouraging each other, supporting one another. There are resources available for that. Lots more available at reuppodcast.com. Make sure to share this. We've talked about a number of issues in this podcast, and I think probably some of it has affected just about every man's life and wherever he is in his journey. And so we'd love for you to share this podcast, maybe through your own social media channel, or maybe it's just subscribing. Go to your own favorite platform where you listen to podcasts and subscribe to this podcast, and we would certainly appreciate that. Thanks for listening to the ReUp Men's Podcast with Tim Brown. I'm Brandon Porter.